Redfall desperately needs to be patched. It's day one, and you know what, there's a fair bit of, oh okay, it's just day one, it'll get better soon. But it is constant with this game. And there's two main glaring issues which need to be patched as soon as possible, especially if the horrible reviews want to be stopped anytime soon. First up is performance/graphics. So the game always looks bad. I'm playing on PC with a decent computer, and whether I'm running on low or on epic settings, the game just looks kind of bad. Just generically so. There's a point where I'm looking at some like trash bins and they just... You can basically see, oh yep, this is a computer game with polygons and stuff. Like, I'm not expecting the game to look real, and I'm not even talking about the art style, which I quite enjoy Arkane's art style. It just looks bad across the board. Everything is suboptimal, things often take some extra time to pop in, and even when they do pop in, you think to yourself, is there more rendering needing to be done? And no, it's just, the game looks like that. I don't know why it looks so bad, because the other part is, it lags a lot as well. If this was an amazing looking game and was lagging all the time, I'd be like, oh okay, I just need to turn down the settings. But I've played around both with epic graphics and low graphics in combat and stuff, and the lagging seems to happen regardless, just no matter what. It's obviously a huge problem during combat. You do not want the game to lag in combat. It's why I've often been just missing shots completely, because I'll click the mouse and then a second later it'll fire. Horrible stuff. And it also is a big issue when going in and out of menus, which means if you ever want to change around your skills a bit or go in your backpack and mess with stuff there, when you come back out, the game's probably going to lag for about 5 seconds, which is quite annoying every single time you do that. The second huge glaring issue is that enemies in this game are so stupid. So this is a big AI problem, where with the ranged enemies like cultists and stuff, it's not a huge issue, because they come in big hordes and they're just going to try and shoot at you, and with volume of fire they'll pose a fair threat. Like, they're not crazy difficult to take out or anything, but there's enough of them, they're spread out, you have to deal with each of them, but you know what, fair enough, they're not the worst thing in the world. But the vampires, the thing you're supposed to be afraid of, are just so easy to dodge. If you're inside, they'll often get stuck on furniture or in walls or stuff like that. If you've got some open space, just keep moving, not quickly or anything, just a casual stroll, and you'll avoid pretty much every single attack. I think in the couple of hours I've spent playing so far, I've maybe been hit 2-3 times by the vampires that I've encountered, and I've encountered about 20 odd vampires so far. That's maybe a 10% hit rate. It's laughable. It's a real shame as well, because the game is primarily a first-person shooter, and when you're dealing with both lag and stupid enemies, while they do counterbalance each other, it's just not good. You've got it bad on both sides. The game becomes extra difficult because of all the nasty lag, and extra easy because of the enemies being just very stupid and not able to figure out what's going on. There was another point where I was up on some stairs and just shooting down at cultists, and they took forever to realise that I was shooting at them from above. Now, I don't want enemies to just instantly, the second I fire my gun, know the pinpoint location I'm at. That bugs me a bit in games. But when you're shooting and you're killing multiple of them, and you're the only gunshot sound, they should be able to figure out where you are pretty fast. In like a few seconds, you know? That sort of thing. But that just doesn't happen here. It's laughably easy to power through enemies in this game. And a big problem of that is that Arcane games are supposed to be all approach it in your own way. You can go stealthy, or you can go guns blazing, or you can do a bit of a mix. Though their games always kind of have this philosophy to them. And I very quickly gave up on stealth because it's worthless. Like, there's not a real advantage to being stealthy. Sure, you can avoid enemies, and that saves you a bit of ammo, which is nice, I guess. But you may as well just go in and kill everyone for the added experience, because it's gonna be an easy fight. In fact, the difficulty itself is another issue, where I had to bump the difficulty up to the maximum you can get, which I believe is night difficulty. There's also a nightmare, I think, once you beat the game, but you need to beat the game for that. And even at the highest difficulty, it wasn't really difficult. It was like, oh, okay, this feels like I have to think about whether I'm going to charge blindly into combat for a second, but then the answer's still yes. In fact, the biggest problem I had on the highest difficulty was when I used one of my abilities, it blinded me, essentially. I was playing as Layla, used the umbrella, and then could not see the enemy that was shooting me. But that's not a problem with the difficulty, and even with that issue, I won the fight easy enough. It was not too hard. The game feels very, very easy so far, despite all the issues, which is a concern. I think a patch for this game desperately needs to come out, and the two things it needs to address above all else is the overall performance, with both graphics and lagging. If they can get rid of the lag and make everything just look a bit neater, perfect. And enemy AI. They need to sort that out, and that I feel will probably be a trickier one, because they clearly launched this game with the AI just being not fully responsive. And it's a real shame, because there's a lot of promise that I see within this game. I like the loot system. It seems like weapons have the bit of the stat and numbers going up thing without going overboard on it. Just the general premise of the vampires taking over a small American town is cool to go with. The skill trees look interesting. There's a lot of bonuses I want to get within those trees, to play around with different abilities and see what works best. And I'd really like to play around with different weapons, although so far there hasn't been a lot of weapon variety. But there's also just a lot of issues. Not only the stuff that needs to be patched, but stuff which will stay forever as far as I'm concerned. One of the big issues is the world just feeling dead and not really real. So I've been trying to interact with elements quite a bit, and it's rarely happened. I've been able to smash some pumpkins, which has been nice, but everything else, I'll like shoot a trash can and there's like, okay, there's like some holes in it, kind of. It doesn't feel real, and there's a logical placement. I noticed early on there were a ton of power boxes all over the place, and I'm like, this is too many power boxes, this makes no sense. This really feels like a game that has been rushed out way ahead of where it was ready. And just fundamentally a lot of flaws in it. And while I'm not one of the people who is like, oh my god, a game launched with bugs and issues, I expect that. Even to me, it feels like they should have pushed this back, and I don't get why it's the way it is. I am playing on PC, on Game Pass. If you've had a different experience on console or anything else, then let me know. And I will also end by saying, don't harass the devs or anything. I know already some of that is happening. Do not do that. Ever. Ever, ever. But yeah, there's definitely problems, and the game needs a patch. If you're wondering whether or not you should buy it, I hate to be the person who's just agreeing with everyone else online right now. I often like to give a counterpoint, but the game needs a patch before it's worth paying money for. I've got it through Game Pass, so I'm happily gonna play around with it some more. I'll be streaming a little later today, so feel free to drop by for that if you want to see what the game's like yourself. But ultimately, it needs a patch, and if it doesn't get patched very soon, I think it's going to just be eternally regarded as a bad game. And it's got the potential to be decent. Not amazing, but decent and lots of fun, and that's all I'm looking for in this. But Arcane needs to patch it within the next day or two, or else I foresee this game constantly being viewed as just, oh, Redfall wasn't that terrible, and I don't want that to happen. Anyway, that is it for this video. Do tune in for the stream later if you want to see a bit more of the game, and apologies I sound a bit rough. I happen to have fallen ill right as the game launched, which is not super helpful. But, as always, thank you very much for watching. Sarge out.